I gave considerable thought to how I would present this situation to the President and try to make as dramatic a presentation as I could to tell him how serious I thought the situation was that the cover-up continue. I began by telling the President that there was a cancer growing on the presidency, and if the cancer was not removed, the President himself would be killed by it.
It was the scandal that took down a presidency. In our nation's history, it was considered perhaps one of the greatest political cover-ups of all time. But the man who back in 1973 was just beginning his Senate career, Joe Biden, together with staffers, members of Congress, and party leaders, many now believe concocted the biggest political scandal in the history of our country. How do we get to the bottom of this? And will anyone be held accountable? My next guest says it's time to have a Watergate-style investigation into the Biden cover-up. I am pleased to be joined by former aide to President Richard Nixon and former chief speechwriter to President Ronald Reagan, and the author of Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Reagan and Nixon, Ken Khachigian. Mr. Khachigian, it's a real privilege to have you with us. You've been part of the American political landscape for over a half century, and your piece in the Wall Street Journal, very, very powerful. Obviously, you saw up close how things unfolded in the early 1970s. In your recent piece in the Journal on Biden, you stated, quote, "A White House cadre with media connivance hoped to drag their puppet over the electoral line to win 4 additional years of power, dangerously undermining the institutional integrity of the presidency." Sir, what needs to happen here?
Well, in my mind, as I argued in my op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, is I think there needs to be a widespread Senate hearing or House hearing, or a joint House and Senate hearing into what is a much wider cover-up that took place over the mental cognitive decline of Biden in the presidency. A much wider cover-up that took place in 1972, 1973 that was alleged during the time when I served in the Nixon White House. This is a horrible, horrible disaster that took place where a small handful of men and women, virtually, I call it burglarized the Oval Office. It was a silent burglary without weapons or anything else. But they took over the Oval Office and took over the president's mind because the president's mind was declining. And until there's a vast investigation of it, this cover-up is going to continue.
Well, we were reporting on this all through 2020, let alone also through the Biden presidency. You also wrote, sir, quote, "The masters of concealment truly stayed silent while a bobblehead president sunned himself on Delaware's beaches with a nuclear football just a few feet away." Obviously, there are plenty of moments, with Biden's slips and falls and his forgetfulness and his public performances. But for those out there, Mr. Khachigian, who don't think this was a big deal, talk to us about how dangerous this was to our republic and our national security.
Well, Newsmax had video of this. You're right. Newsmax had video of this during this entire period while the president was obviously displaying cognitive decline, but there you are showing video of him suntanning on the beach while his staff was taking over. We had war in Ukraine. At the early part of his presidency, we had 13 American soldiers killed on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And we'd like to know who made that decision. Was it the president, or was it the small Politburo surrounding him? The president himself was stumbling and mumbling and fumbling as he was in that debate with President Trump. Clearly, he was not in any position to make a decision where lives were at stake, where American servicemen and women and America could be drawn into a massive military disaster across the globe. And here we haven't. Nobody's showing interest in this, and this is very vastly disturbing to me. And then you had the press secretary out there virtually every day claiming that the president was sane and able to conduct himself, and not having any mental problem.
And now, sir, not to interrupt you, but now, sir, now she says she's leaving the party, that the Biden White House was broken, after standing there and being part of this cover-up. Now, Mr. Khachigian, I don't disagree with you here, but there are a lot of Americans who look at the January 6th hearings that were produced by the former president of ABC News, the two impeachments against President Trump that, whether you like President Trump or not, I think most Americans feel were kind of sham impeachments, were political impeachments. They don't think that congressional hearings really accomplish anything. How do you give this teeth if it needs to proceed with the urgency and the scope that you suggest?
Well, it can be done if you have a staff that's really well informed, and you have a lot of credibility put behind it. The problem with the January 6th hearings is that a great deal of it was just a publicity act. And it didn't turn out to be bipartisan. And you've got to put the feet to the fire on the Democrats on this. The Democrats know that they were part of this whole thing. You had Pelosi and Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries all involved in the fact that they were also covering up for Biden on this thing.
Right.
So you have to get a grand jury involved, because clearly I suspect there was fraudulent activity within the White House, making some decisions in potential violation of federal law over and above.
And Mr. Khachigian, I'm out of time, but, when it came to Nixon, real quickly for me, sir, the folks pushing the investigation, they got their pound of flesh. They got him out of office. What does that look like in this context? President Biden is out of office. Are we talking about ultimately potentially prosecuting staffers for abuse of power or violating some sort of federal statute? Just quickly for me.
Yeah, Biden's not the issue. He has no power anymore. The issue is the violation by the staffers, exposing them and showing how they violated their duty of office. They also swore an oath of duty when they entered the White House. And you need to expose them and expose the party, the entire Democratic Party, for being complicit in what took place. They all were involved in this massive conspiracy of silence and a massive cover-up, and it needed to taint the entire Democratic Party in the process.
Kenneth Khachigian, it's been a real privilege, sir. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And for more on this, joining us now, the